"Mom, Dad has a new friend, and she's really pretty," my little boy whispered, not knowing how his words sliced through me. I drove to the park with a shaking heart, expecting to see another woman, yet what I found was far stranger. A woman I'd never met, a child who looked too familiar, and a truth that still keeps me awake at night. "Mom, why does Dad kiss that lady at the park?" I froze with the bacon spatula halfway to the plate. Mason was staring at me across the kitchen island, chocolate milk mustache on his upper lip, waiting for an answer like he'd just asked about the weather. "What lady, sweetheart?" The words came out calm, but my heart had started hammering against my ribs. "The pretty one with the sparkly earrings," Emma chimed in, swinging her legs from her booster seat. "She has a little girl who looks just like Mason. Isn't that weird, Mommy?" Before we continue, I want to thank you for being here as we uncover this shocking truth together. If you believe in justice and standing up against betrayal, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us reach more people. Now let's see what happens next. The spatula clattered to the stovetop. 7 years old and 5 years old, and my children had just casually told me my husband was living a double life. I turned back to the stove, gripping the counter's edge until my knuckles went white. The bacon was burning. I could smell it, see the smoke starting to curl upward, but I couldn't make myself move. My professional training, a decade of managing crises for Boston's most powerful politicians and executives, should have kicked in by now. Should have helped me maintain that perfect mask of composure I wore when senators called at 2 in the morning to confess their latest scandal. But this wasn't someone else's disaster. This was mine. "Where does Daddy kiss this lady?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay light and curious. Just a mom asking about her kid's day. Nothing earth-shattering happening in our sunny kitchen with its white subway tile backsplash and the bay windows that let in too much harsh morning light. Mason shrugged, swinging his legs under the counter. "At Riverside Park. You know, where Dad takes us every Saturday morning while you work on your computer stuff." "Every Saturday morning? For how long?" "He doesn't kiss her like he kisses you, Mom," Emma added helpfully, reaching for her sippy cup. "It's different, softer. And he smiles at her the way he smiles at us when we do something good." Something cold and sharp twisted in my chest. I grabbed the smoking pan and moved it off the burner, then just stood there staring at the ruined bacon, trying to process what my kindergartner had just described with devastating innocence. "Tell me about the little girl," I said, turning around to face them. I kept my expression neutral, interested, like we were discussing their favorite playground game instead of the fact that their father had apparently been conducting an affair right in front of them. "Her name is Lily," Emma announced with 5-year-old enthusiasm. "She's 6 and she's so cool, Mommy. She can do a backflip off the swings." "A real backflip," Mason confirmed, his eyes lighting up the way they did when he talked about something impressive. "And she climbs to the top of the jungle gym without being scared. Plus she looks exactly like me. Same hair, same nose. Even Mrs. Chin from Dad's office said so when she saw us at the park once." My breath caught. Mrs. Chin had seen them? Arlo's assistant had witnessed whatever this was, which meant it wasn't hidden. It was out in the open, public enough that people from his office had noticed. "Does the pretty lady talk to you?" I asked, reaching for Emma's toast that had popped up moments before my life imploded. My hands were shaking now, but I forced them steady as I spread butter across the bread. "Sometimes," Mason said through a mouthful of cereal. "She's nice. She always brings good snacks, like gummy bears and those cookies with frosting. Not the healthy ones you pack, Mom." "No offense." "None taken," I managed, cutting Emma's toast into perfect triangles because my hands needed something to do. Something normal and mundane while my children described my husband's other family like they were talking about characters in a cartoon. Emma swung her legs, tapping her heels against the booster seat. "Daddy calls her sweetheart sometimes. And he buys her the fancy coffee from the cart. The one with the whipped cream on top. The fancy coffee." Arlo barely remembered how I took my coffee anymore. 2 sugars, splash of cream. I'd stopped expecting him to bring me anything from the cart years ago, chalking it up to marriage becoming comfortable, familiar, less romantic. Turned out he was plenty romantic, just not with me. "How long has Daddy been taking you to see them?" I asked, pouring orange juice with a hand that felt disconnected from my body. Mason scrunched up his face, thinking. "I don't know. A long time. Since before Emma's birthday, I think." Emma's birthday was 4 months ago. 4 months of Saturday morning lies. 4 months of Arlo kissing my forehead and herding the kids out the door for quality time, while I stayed home catching up on client emails and proposals. Quality time with another woman. Another child who looked like our son. I thought about our marriage. 10 years this October. I'd met Arlo at a networking event when I was building my crisis communications consulting business. He'd been charming, successful in commercial real estate development, ready to settle down. We'd married quickly, had Mason 2 years later, then Emma 3 years after that. It had been good, or I thought it was good. Normal marriage problems, money stress, parenting disagreements, the way romance fades into routine when you're raising small children and building careers. Nothing that seemed catastrophic, but now I was calculating backward through our timeline like I did for clients facing exposure, and the numbers were making me sick. Lily was 6. Emma had just turned 5, which meant when I was pregnant with Emma, exhausted and hormonal and dealing with morning sickness, Arlo was already involved with someone else, already building this other life. Or maybe Lily came after Emma was born. When I was drowning in postpartum depression, barely sleeping, crying in the shower so the kids wouldn't hear. When Arlo was traveling constantly for those development deals in Cambridge and Worcester. When he'd come home smelling like hotel soap and claiming he was too exhausted for intimacy because negotiations had gone late into the night. Had he been with her those nights? Had she been pregnant while I struggled alone with a newborn and a toddler? "Mommy, you're squeezing the juice too hard," Emma said, pointing at the carton in my hand. I looked down to see orange juice overflowing Emma's cup, spilling across the counter. I set the carton down carefully and grabbed a dishcloth, wiping up the mess with mechanical precision. "Does Lily's mommy come to the park too?" I asked, keeping my voice conversational. "That's who Dad talks to," Mason confirmed, scraping the bottom of his cereal bowl. "They stand together while we play. Sometimes they sit on the bench and drink coffee. Dad always laughs at her jokes. He laughs different with her than with you, Mom." Louder. "He laughs different with her." My 7-year-old had noticed that my husband was happier with his mistress than with his wife, and I'd been completely oblivious. I'd been so focused on managing everyone else's crises. The congressman whose affair with his intern had threatened his re-election campaign. The tech CEO whose email scandal needed damage control. The nonprofit director whose embezzlement charges required careful media navigation. I'd spent 10 years building a reputation as the person who could fix anything, manage any disaster, turn catastrophes into controlled narratives. And I'd missed the Category 5 hurricane building in my own kitchen. "You should come to the park with us sometime, Mommy," Emma suggested, reaching for her juice. "Then you could meet Lily. I bet you'd like her." "Everybody likes her." "Maybe I will," I said, managing something close to a smile. "That sounds nice, sweetheart." I got the kids ready for school on autopilot after that, brushing Emma's tangled blonde hair while she complained about the princess braid being too tight, packing Mason's lunch. Turkey sandwich, apple slices, string cheese, the carrots he'd trade to his friend Brandon. Finding Emma's library book that was due today. Signing the field trip permission slip for Mason's class trip to the Science Museum. All the normal Tuesday morning tasks that mothers do, while my mind raced through scenarios and possibilities like I was prepping for a client presentation. An affair was devastating, but an affair with a child? That wasn't a moment of weakness or a midlife crisis fling. That was a second life, a parallel family. Systematic deception that required planning, coordination, financial resources I hadn't known Arlo was spending. Where was the money coming from? Our joint account that I barely monitored because I trusted him to handle finances while I focused on my demanding clients? Had he been funneling our savings to support this other woman and her daughter while I paid our mortgage and grocery bills? The school bus arrived at exactly 8:15 like it always did. I kissed Mason and Emma goodbye, watched them climb the steps with their oversized backpacks, waved until the bus turned the corner onto Commonwealth Avenue. Mrs. Patterson from next door called a cheerful good morning over the hedge, reminding me that book club was Thursday and did I still want to bring my lemon bars? "Absolutely," I called back, voice bright and steady. Looking forward to it. Crisis management rule number 1. Never let them see you bleeding. Back inside, I walked through our brownstone like I was seeing it for the first time. The living room where we'd argued about whether the sectional sofa was too big for the space. The dining room table where we ate Sunday dinners and celebrated birthdays. The framed photos lining the hallway. Our wedding day, Mason as a newborn, Emma's first birthday, last Christmas with coordinated outfits and forced smiles. Had any of it been real? Or had I been living in a carefully constructed lie while Arlo maintained his real life somewhere else? My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. My sister Ivy's name flashed on the screen. Her Tuesday morning check-in call, regular as clockwork since her cancer treatment ended 3 years ago. I stared at the phone, thumb hovering over the answer button. I could tell her. Ivy would be furious on my behalf, would drive over immediately with wine and sisterly rage. She'd help me plan whatever came next. But if I said the words out loud, "Arlo has another child," then I couldn't unknow them. Couldn't pretend this was some misunderstanding or innocent explanation. Speaking it would make it real. The call went to voicemail. I'd text her later. Make up something about being on a client call, dealing with an emergency that needed immediate attention. Not entirely a lie. My marriage was definitely an emergency. I pulled my laptop onto the kitchen table and opened Google Maps. Typed in Riverside Park. The satellite view showed the playground area clearly. Swings, jungle gym, walking paths along the Charles River. That big oak tree where parents typically gathered on weekend mornings, drinking coffee while their kids burned off energy. Good sight lines from multiple angles. Benches positioned throughout. Parking available 2 blocks away on the side streets. Saturday was 4 days away. 4 days to plan, to prepare, to decide exactly how I wanted to handle the moment when I stopped being the clueless wife and became something else entirely. I went upstairs to our bedroom, the room Arlo and I had shared for 10 years, where we'd made love and argued about thermostat settings and discussed parenting strategies. I opened the closet and dug through boxes on the top shelf until I found what I needed. An old Red Sox cap Ivy had left after last summer's barbecue. Oversized sunglasses I'd bought for a vacation and never worn because they made me look like I was trying too hard. A gray zip-up hoodie I'd relegated to the donation pile but never actually donated. I'd look like every other tired Boston mom running weekend errands in athleisure wear. Unremarkable, forgettable, invisible, exactly what I needed to be. Because here's what Arlo had forgotten about me if he'd ever really known. I'd built my entire career on managing impossible situations, on investigating what people wanted hidden, on documenting evidence and building cases and knowing exactly when to deploy information for maximum impact. I knew how to find truth in lies, how to piece together stories from fragments, how to control narratives and orchestrate consequences. Arlo thought he was being careful. Saturday morning fitness routines as cover. Taking the kids along to make it look innocent. Probably telling this woman I was too busy with work to join them. Painting me as the career-obsessed wife who neglected her family. But he'd made one critical mistake. He turned our children into his alibis. And children, bless them, tell the truth. Mason and Emma had handed me everything. The location, the timing, the woman's appearance, even the other child's name and age. Lily, 6 years old, looked exactly like Mason. My phone buzzed with a work email. A client needed an emergency strategy session about a harassment allegation that had just gone public. I responded professionally, scheduled the call for 2 o'clock, compartmentalized my personal crisis into a box I'd deal with later. Because that's what I did. I managed disasters, fixed impossible situations, made problems disappear or, when necessary, controlled exactly how they exploded and who got hurt in the blast radius. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. I needed to see this with my own eyes, document it, understand the full scope of what I was dealing with before I decided what to do next. And I would decide. Not Arlo, not some well-meaning friend offering advice, not even my fierce, protective sister. Me. Whatever happened next, I'd be the one controlling it, managing it, orchestrating every consequence with the precision I brought to my most high-stakes client situations. I walked back to the bay windows in our living room, looking out at our quiet South End street with its historic brownstones and carefully tended front gardens. Picture-perfect Boston neighborhood. Picture-perfect family. At least that's what everyone thought. 4 more days until Saturday. 4 more days until I stopped being the wife who didn't know, and became the woman Arlo should have been terrified of all along. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of cruel normalcy that makes betrayal even worse. I woke to sunlight streaming through our bedroom windows, the sound of Arlo's alarm chirping at 7:30 like it did every weekend. He rolled out of bed with a groan, stretched his arms overhead, and padded to the bathroom like this was just another ordinary Saturday. Like he wasn't about to take our children to meet his secret family. I stayed in bed, watching through half-closed eyes as he went through his performance. The stretching routine he'd started 4 months ago. Lunges, arm circles, touching his toes with exaggerated effort. Checking his fitness watch. Tapping the screen multiple times like the metrics actually mattered. Humming some tuneless melody while he brushed his teeth. He was good. I give him that. Years of practice had made him convincing. When he came back to the bedroom to pull on jeans and a navy Henley, the one I'd bought him last Christmas because it brought out his eyes, I forced myself to breathe normally, to look like a wife still asleep, not a woman planning surveillance on her own husband. Taking the kids to the park, he said softly, probably thinking I was still sleeping. Let you get some rest. How thoughtful. What a devoted husband, giving his hard-working wife a peaceful Saturday morning. I waited until I heard him head downstairs, heard Mason's excited voice and Emma's higher-pitched chatter, heard the sounds of breakfast being rushed through. Then I got up and moved to the window, watching as Arlo herded our children into his black BMW. He kissed my forehead before they left. I'd come downstairs in my bathrobe, playing the role of tired wife, grateful for a quiet morning to catch up on work. Big client presentation Monday, I'd said, gesturing vaguely toward my laptop on the kitchen table. I really need to prepare. The lie came easily. After 10 years of marriage, we'd gotten good at lying to each other. I just hadn't realized it until now. Take your time, Arlo said, his hand warm on my shoulder. We'll probably hit the playground for a couple hours. Burn off some energy. He smiled. Easy, relaxed, completely guilt-free. I smiled back. The moment his BMW pulled out of our driveway, I was moving. Jeans I'd laid out the night before. Gray hoodie, hair pulled into a messy bun under Ivy's Red Sox cap. Oversized sunglasses that covered half my face. I looked exactly like what I was trying to be, forgettable. My hands shook as I grabbed my car keys from the hook by the door. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, hear the rush of blood in my ears. This was different from client work. This was personal. This was my life imploding in real time, and I was about to witness it with my own eyes. The drive to Riverside Park took 20 minutes through Saturday morning traffic. I parked 2 blocks away on a residential side street, checked my appearance in the rearview mirror. Just another Boston mom. Nothing remarkable. Nothing memorable. I could do this. The park was busy with weekend crowds, joggers in expensive running gear, families with strollers, dog walkers letting their animals off-leash in the designated area. I blended in easily, just one more person enjoying the cool October morning. The Charles River stretched out beyond the park, water reflecting gray October sky. I found a bench with clear sight lines to the main playground, close enough to see everything, far enough away to avoid detection. I pulled out my phone, angling it like I was scrolling through social media. Just another distracted parent barely supervising from a distance. Mason and Emma hit the playground at full speed the moment they arrived. I watched them race toward the swings, Emma's blonde ponytail bouncing, Mason's dark curls catching the light. Arlo followed more slowly, hands in his pockets, checking his phone with that nervous energy I'd mistaken for work stress so many times. He was waiting for someone. I knew it before she appeared, but knowing didn't prepare me for the reality. She came from the walking path that curved along the river, not from the parking lot like a normal visitor. Like she'd been waiting just out of sight, timing her arrival to match his. Long dark hair pulled into a high ponytail that swung as she walked. Expensive athleisure wear with visible designer logos, Lululemon leggings, a fitted Nike jacket that probably cost more than my entire outfit, oversized sunglasses despite the overcast sky, and holding her hand, skipping to keep up with her longer stride, was a little girl who made my breath catch in my throat. Mason hadn't been exaggerating. This child looked like my son. Same dark curls, same nose, same distinctive dimple in her left cheek. The resemblance was so strong it was almost eerie, like looking at a photograph of Mason at 6 years old, except this was a girl in a pink jacket with sparkly sneakers. Lily. She broke away from the woman and ran straight to Arlo, arms outstretched, calling something I couldn't hear from this distance. He bent down and caught her in a hug that looked practiced, familiar, natural. The same way he hugged Mason and Emma. The same affection, the same warmth. My finger found the camera button on my phone. I started taking pictures, rapid and compulsive, zooming in as much as the lens would allow. Arlo's hand on Lily's head, ruffling her curls. The woman approaching with a smile, 2 coffee cups in her hands. The way Arlo accepted one with a nod of thanks. The fancy coffee Emma had mentioned, with whipped cream on top. I took more pictures as the woman, I still didn't know her name but I would soon, stood beside Arlo. They weren't touching but the space between them was intimate, comfortable. The body language of people who knew each other well, who'd stood like this many times before. Lily ran to join Mason and Emma at the jungle gym. I watched my 3 children play together, a detail so surreal I had to blink several times to make sure I wasn't imagining it. They moved around each other with easy familiarity. Mason helped Lily reach a higher bar. Emma showed her something on the ground, probably a bug or an interesting rock. Knowing Emma, they were friends, real friends who saw each other regularly enough to have developed routines and inside jokes. And I'd had no idea. Arlo and the woman migrated to a nearby bench, still in view of the playground but with enough privacy for conversation. I shifted slightly on my bench, adjusting my angle to keep them in frame. Through my phone's camera, I watched him put his hand on her lower back. Casual, proprietary, the gesture of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. She leaned into him, not dramatically, not like some movie affair, just a subtle shift of weight, her shoulder pressing against his arm. This wasn't new. This wasn't the nervous energy of a fresh affair, stolen moments filled with adrenaline and fear of discovery. This was established, routine, comfortable. How long? How many Saturdays had this played out while I stayed home, blissfully ignorant? When Mason and Emma got distracted chasing each other near the oak tree, shrieking with laughter about something only children understand, Arlo turned to the woman and kissed her temple. Quick, familiar, unguarded. The kind of kiss you give someone you love without thinking about it. My stomach turned. I took the picture anyway, documenting evidence even as my hands shook. I watched them for 40 minutes that felt like hours. Watched Arlo push Lily on the swings with the same careful attention he gave Emma. Watched him laugh at something the woman said, that loud, genuine laugh Mason had noticed, the one he didn't use with me anymore. Watched all 3 children play together like the siblings they apparently were, at least on Saturday mornings in Riverside Park. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd expected. It wasn't just Arlo lying to me, building this secret life behind my back. He'd used our children as cover, brought Mason and Emma into his deception, made them unknowing participants in his affair. What kind of man does that? Around 10:30 I saw Arlo check his watch. He called to Mason and Emma, who groaned in protest the way kids do when fun is ending. The woman bent down to Lily's level, saying something that made the little girl nod seriously. Then Lily hugged Arlo goodbye, another long, comfortable embrace, before returning to her mother. They separated like this was routine, like they'd perfected the choreography of coming together and pulling apart without drawing attention. I left before Arlo could spot me, forcing my shaking legs to carry me back through the park at a normal pace. Just another mom finishing her morning walk. Nothing to see here. In my car 2 blocks away, I sat gripping the steering wheel for 10 minutes before I trusted myself to drive. The photos on my phone told the whole story. Arlo's hand on her back, the way Lily looked at him with obvious affection, the comfortable body language of people who'd known each other for years. I forced myself to breathe slowly, deliberately, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Crisis management training. Assess the damage, catalog the evidence, plan the response. But this wasn't someone else's scandal. This was mine. And all the professional training in the world couldn't stop the tears that finally came, hot and furious and devastating. I let myself cry for exactly 10 minutes. Then I wiped my face with fast food napkins from the glove compartment, fixed my smudged mascara in the rearview mirror and drove home. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I looked normal, composed, like I'd spent the morning working on that non-existent client presentation instead of watching my marriage disintegrate in a public park. I locked myself in our bedroom and opened my laptop. The woman's face was clear in several photos. I started with reverse image searches, pulling up search engines and inputting the images with shaking hands. Nothing came up immediately. She wasn't a public figure, didn't have tagged photos on social media. But I had other tools: property records, business registrations, LinkedIn searches using Boston and interior design and approximate age range. I was good at this. Finding information people wanted hidden was literally my job. Within an hour I had a name: Vanessa Moreau, 34 years old, interior designer with her own small firm in Cambridge. I found her business website showcasing elegant living rooms and modern kitchens, glowing client testimonials, a carefully curated professional image. No mention of a husband. No photos of Lily, which made sense, keeping her daughter offline for safety reasons probably. No connection to Arlo visible anywhere, which meant they'd been careful. Smart, but not smart enough. I heard the BMW pull into the driveway around noon. Heard the front door open, Mason and Emma's voices chattering about the playground, about Lily's backflip, about the fancy coffee cart that Daddy bought from. I closed my laptop and walked downstairs, composing my face into something resembling normal. Arlo was helping Emma out of her jacket in the entryway. Mason had already kicked off his shoes and was heading for the TV. "How was the park?" I asked, leaning against the kitchen doorframe. Arlo looked up, smiling. Easy, relaxed, completely unburdened by guilt. "Great. Kids had a blast. Beautiful morning." "Liar." "That's wonderful," I said, returning his smile. "I'm glad you all had fun. I was good at performing too. 10 years of managing crises had taught me how to maintain perfect composure while everything crumbled internally." Arlo had no idea what I'd seen, what I knew, what was coming, and for now I'd let him keep thinking he was safe. Sunday stretched out with the kind of suffocating normalcy that makes you question your own sanity. Arlo made pancakes for breakfast, his weekend specialty, complete with chocolate chips arranged in smiley faces for the kids. We went to the farmer's market in the afternoon, Mason and Emma running between stalls while Arlo held my hand like we were still the couple from our Christmas cards. He was so good at this, so practiced. I watched him pick out apples and joke with the vendor and wondered if this was what going crazy felt like, knowing the truth while everyone around you performed a lie. By the time we got home and he'd settled the kids with a movie, claiming he needed to catch up on work, in his home office, I was vibrating with the need to know more, to understand the full scope of what I'd witnessed at Riverside Park. I waited until I heard his office door close, heard the click of his keyboard starting up. Then I took my laptop to our bedroom and locked the door. Vanessa Moreau's digital footprint was careful but not invisible. Her interior design business had a professional website showcasing elegant living rooms and sleek kitchens. Her Instagram was public, beautiful shots of her work, occasional lifestyle posts about morning coffee and gratitude. No photos of Lily, which I understood. Some parents kept their kids offline for safety. No photos of Arlo either. No hints of a relationship. They'd been smart about that, but smart wasn't the same as invisible. I pulled up property records for Cambridge, searching by her name, found the condo in Porter Square, a renovated building near the T-station, the kind of place young professionals paid premium prices for. Purchase date, November 2017. 7 years ago. My hands froze on the keyboard. Not 4 months, not even 2 years. 7 years of this. 7 years of systematic deception. And there, buried in the property documents, was Arlo's name. Cosigner on the mortgage. Legal proof that he'd helped her buy this place, been financially tied to her for nearly our entire marriage. I felt like I was falling even though I was sitting perfectly still on our bed. November 2017. That was 2 months after I'd gotten pregnant with Emma. 2 months after we'd celebrated with champagne and called our families with the happy news. While I was dealing with first trimester exhaustion and morning sickness, Arlo had been signing mortgage papers for another woman's home. I forced myself to keep digging. Our bank statements were stored in a shared folder Arlo had set up years ago. Convenient access for both of us, though I rarely looked at them. He handled the finances. I trusted him. Stupid. I'd been so stupid. I opened the last 6 months of statements first, scrolling through the familiar charges. Grocery stores, gas stations, the kids' school fees. And there, like clockwork, Boston Consulting Group, monthly retainer, $2,000. Same charge every month going back as far as I scrolled. I pulled up older statements, 2 years back, 3 years, $2,000, every single month for years. I grabbed my phone and called the Massachusetts Business Registry, using the after-hours automated system. Entered the business name, waited while the system searched. No business entity found matching that name. Boston Consulting Group didn't exist. It was fake. A shell company Arlo had created to hide what he was really doing, funneling our money to Vanessa. $2,000 a month for 7 years was. I did the math quickly, my crisis management brain running numbers even as my heart was breaking. $168,000. Almost $200,000 of our money, gone to support his other family while I'd been carefully budgeting our household expenses, clipping coupons, worrying about whether we could afford to refinish the hardwood floors. The scope of the deception was staggering. This wasn't just an affair. This was systematic financial fraud, hidden in plain sight because he'd counted on me being too busy, too trusting, too focused on my demanding career to look closely at our accounts. I pulled up our photo albums next, the digital ones backed up to the cloud. Started scrolling backward through years of documented happiness, family vacations, birthday parties, holiday photos. There was Emma's birth, October 2019. I remembered that time so clearly. Difficult labor that ended in an emergency situation, weeks of recovery, months of postpartum exhaustion. Arlo had been supportive but distant, traveling for work, more than usual that winter. Or so he'd said. I kept scrolling. Mason's 3rd birthday in 2018, the dinosaur party I'd planned for weeks. Our anniversary trip to Vermont in 2017, that romantic weekend getaway before Emma was born. We'd stayed at a bed and breakfast, hiked mountain trails, talked about our future and how lucky we were. 2 months later, he'd bought Vanessa a condo. If Lily was 6 now, she'd been born in 2018. I pulled up a calendar and started counting backward. Pregnancy is 9 months, which meant Vanessa would have gotten pregnant around. My vision blurred. December 2017, January 2018. I'd been pregnant with Emma, dealing with second trimester exhaustion, shopping for baby furniture, nesting. And Arlo had been getting another woman pregnant. 2 babies, 2 families, 2 completely separate lives running on parallel tracks. While I was carrying our daughter, Vanessa was carrying his other daughter. Did he ever mix us up? Forget which pregnancy he was supposed to be excited about, which nursery he was supposed to help paint. The photos blurred in front of me. I wanted to throw the laptop across the room, watch it shatter against our expensive wallpaper. Instead, I closed it carefully and sat there in the silence of our bedroom, listening to Arlo's keyboard clicking away in his office down the hall. He had no idea I knew. No idea that his careful 7-year deception was unraveling because our son had asked an innocent question over breakfast. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Ivy's name flashed on the screen, her weekend check-in text, asking if I wanted to grab coffee Monday morning. I stared at the message. My sister's face filled my mind. Fierce, protective, the person who'd always had my back. I needed to talk to someone. Needed to say all of this out loud before it consumed me. but not yet. First, I needed to understand everything. Needed to know exactly what I was dealing with before I decided what to do next. I texted back, "Can't tomorrow, swamped with client work. Maybe next week." The lie came easily now. I was getting good at this. Monday morning I woke with absolute clarity, the kind that comes after a sleepless night spent staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios and possibilities. I'd spent 10 years building a career helping powerful people manage their worst moments. Politicians caught in scandals, executives facing exposure. I'd accumulated favors, connections, leverage. Now it was time to use them. I waited until Arlo left for work, until the kids were on the school bus. Then I called Rebecca Vaughn. Rebecca was the best divorce attorney in Massachusetts, the kind of lawyer other lawyers recommended when things got complicated. She was also someone who owed me. 2 years ago, her husband's congressional campaign had nearly imploded over a lobbying scandal. I'd managed the crisis, controlled the narrative, saved his career. She picked up on the first ring. "Juniper Hartley. To what do I owe the pleasure?" Her voice was warm, professional, efficient. Rebecca didn't waste time on small talk. "I need a consultation," I said. "Today. Private entrance. Absolute discretion." The pause that followed told me she understood immediately. Rebecca had been practicing family law long enough to recognize the tone of a wife who'd discovered something devastating. 2 o'clock, she said. "I'll clear my schedule. Come through the parking garage entrance. Elevator directly to my floor." I spent the next 3 hours compiling everything into a presentation that would have impressed my most demanding clients. Property records showing the Cambridge condo purchase with Arlo's name on the document. Bank statements highlighting the fake consulting company charges. Screenshots of the transfers going back 7 years. The photos from Riverside Park time-stamped and geotagged. A timeline analysis showing the overlap between my pregnancy with Emma and what must have been Vanessa's pregnancy with Lily. By the time I walked into Rebecca's office overlooking Boston Common, I had a case file that could have been used in court tomorrow. Rebecca's office was exactly what you'd expect from someone at the top of her field: floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive furniture that managed to be both comfortable and intimidating, walls lined with law books and framed commendations. She stood when I entered, extending a hand. "Juniper, good to see you, though I'm sorry about the circumstances. Thank you for making time on short notice. For you, always." She gestured to the leather chairs arranged around a small conference table. "Show me what you have." I laid it all out with the clinical precision I brought to my most high-stakes client work. Started with the children's innocent revelation, moved through my surveillance at the park, then hit her with the financial evidence and property records. Rebecca listened without interrupting, reading through the documentation I'd spread across her table. Her expression remained professionally neutral for the first few minutes, then shifted to something harder, sharper. When I finished, she removed her reading glasses and looked at me with an intensity that reminded me why she had her reputation. "This is extraordinary," she said finally. "Juniper, I've been practicing family law for 28 years. I've seen a lot of infidelity, a lot of hidden assets, a lot of deception. But this," she gestured at the documents, "the secret child, the systematic financial deception, the dual life maintained for 7 years. This isn't just infidelity. This is financial fraud." She picked up the bank statements, studying the recurring charges. "If he's structured these fake consulting fees as business expenses for tax purposes, that's federal exposure. If he's hidden this income from the IRS, we're potentially looking at criminal charges beyond the divorce." "I don't want him in prison," I said carefully. "I want leverage." Rebecca's smile was sharp as glass. "Then you're in exactly the right place. With this documentation we can push for terms that would normally take years to negotiate. Full custody. No judge will grant significant visitation to a father who used his children as cover for an affair. The house is yours, given his systematic deception. His retirement accounts, spousal support calculated on his real income including what he's been hiding. He'll agree to anything to keep this quiet." She pulled out a legal pad and started making notes in her precise handwriting. "We'll file for emergency temporary orders first. Exclusive use of the marital home. Immediate financial disclosure. Supervised visitation only. Then we'll move on the financial fraud." We spent the next hour mapping strategy. Rebecca asked pointed questions about our assets, Arlo's business, whether I wanted this to go public or be handled quietly. I answered everything, feeling that strange lightness that comes with taking action after days of helpless rage. By the time I left her office I had a plan, not just for divorce but for the complete dismantling of everything Arlo had built on lies. The walk back to my car felt different. The October air seemed crisper, the city sharper and more vivid. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a strategist with documentation, legal representation, and a decade of crisis management experience. Arlo had no idea what was coming, and I intended to keep it that way until the exact moment I was ready to strike. I spent Monday night and all of Tuesday planning, not just the legal strategy. Rebecca had that covered. This was about the confrontation itself, the moment when Arlo would realize his carefully constructed 7-year lie had collapsed. In crisis management, timing is everything. You don't expose a scandal during a slow news cycle when it'll dominate headlines. You don't ambush someone when they're prepared to defend themselves. You wait for the perfect moment when their guard is down, when they feel safe. Tuesday evening, I cooked Arlo's favorite meal: pan-seared salmon with a herb crust, roasted vegetables with balsamic glaze, garlic mashed potatoes made from scratch. I set the dining room table with our good china, the set we'd received as a wedding gift and only used for Thanksgiving and Christmas, linen napkins, candles in the silver holders his mother had given us, a bottle of Cabernet from the wine rack, the expensive kind Arlo saved for special occasions. The whole performance. I was dressed nicely too, not overdone, just the navy wrap dress he'd always liked, minimal makeup, hair down the way he preferred. I looked like a wife trying to reconnect with her husband. Romantic dinner, quality time. When Arlo came home from work at 6:30, he stopped in the dining room doorway, briefcase still in hand, confusion crossing his face. "What's the occasion?" he asked, setting down his briefcase and approaching me cautiously. I turned from lighting the last candle, smiling. "Can't I make a nice dinner for my husband?" He relaxed visibly, the tension leaving his shoulders. Kissed my cheek. The gesture made my skin crawl, but I kept smiling. "You've been working so hard lately. I thought we could use a nice evening together." "That's really thoughtful, Viv." He loosened his tie, actually looking pleased. "Let me wash up." I'd timed everything perfectly. The salmon was finishing in the oven when he came back downstairs in jeans and a casual button-down. I poured wine, served dinner, settled into the performance of normalcy. Through the meal I made small talk, asked about his development project in Cambridge. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mentioned Mason's upcoming school project. Talked about Emma's obsession with fairy tales. Nothing important, nothing that would raise his suspicions. I let him drink most of the wine bottle. Relax, people make mistakes. Their defenses lower. They forget to be careful. After the main course, while Arlo was reaching for seconds of the mashed potatoes, I dropped it, casually, like I was mentioning weekend plans. "I've been thinking about that job offer from the Seattle firm, the equity partnership. I'm considering accepting it." Arlo's fork paused halfway to his mouth. I watched his face carefully, cataloging every micro-expression. Surprise, then calculation, then unmistakably relief. He was already thinking about how this could work for him, how my relocation across the country would solve his problem of maintaining 2 families in the same city. "Seattle." He set down his fork, trying to sound concerned rather than hopeful. "But your whole client base is here. You've spent 10 years building those connections. I can build new connections. Fresh start, you know." I refilled his wine glass, watching the deep red liquid catch the candlelight. "The kids would adjust. New schools, new opportunities. We could be relocated by spring." I saw it register then, the "we." His relief flickered with confusion. "Of course," I continued, pushing vegetables around my plate with studied casualness. "We'd need to discuss logistics, custody arrangements, splitting assets, all that." The fork clattered against his plate. "Custody arrangements?" His voice was carefully controlled, but I heard the edge underneath. "Juniper, what are you talking about?" I tilted my head, all innocence. "Well, I just assumed with your business here, with all your commitments." I paused, letting it hang there. "All your Saturday commitments at Riverside Park." The color drained from Arlo's face so fast I wondered if he might actually pass out. His hand gripped the edge of the table, knuckles going white. "What Saturday commitments?" But his voice wavered, betraying him. I set down my fork with deliberate care. Let the silence stretch for 3 beats. "For Riverside Park," I said finally. "Vanessa Moreau and Lily." The wine glass slipped from Arlo's hand like his fingers had forgotten how to hold objects. Red wine spread across our white tablecloth in an expanding stain that looked exactly like what it was, evidence of something ruined beyond repair. Arlo's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. I watched him try to formulate words, explanations, denials. Watched his lawyer brain scramble for the right response. I stood up, walked to the sideboard where I'd strategically placed my laptop before dinner, brought it back to the table and opened it, turning the screen so he could see the photos from Saturday. Arlo with his hand on Vanessa's back, Lily hugging him, the kiss on the temple, all 3 children playing together. "Beautiful child, by the way," I said conversationally. "She has your eyes, and Mason's nose. The resemblance is really quite striking. Funny how genetics work." "Juniper, I can explain." The words finally came, desperate and panicked. I held up one hand. Please don't. I've already consulted with Rebecca Vaughn. I have 7 years of bank transfers showing systematic financial fraud, property records with your name on them, photographs, documentation of the fake Boston consulting group you created to hide payments to Vanessa. I pulled up more documents on the screen, letting him see the scope of what I'd uncovered. Bank statements highlighted in yellow. Property records. The business registry search showing no entity by that name. DNA testing won't even be necessary, though we can certainly arrange it if you'd like. Lily looks more like Mason than Emma does. Any judge will take one look at those children and know exactly what happened. Arlo's face cycled through emotions so fast I almost couldn't track them. Panic, calculation, desperation, the realization that his carefully maintained 7-year deception had imploded. You can't, he started. This will destroy your career. I finished for him. Your reputation in Boston's commercial real estate community? Yes, probably. The thing is, Arlo, I manage crises for the most powerful people in this city. Politicians, executives, people whose scandals could end careers and destroy families. Creating those crises, that's even easier than managing them. I leaned forward, making sure he saw the steel in my eyes, the fury I'd been controlling for days. Here's what's going to happen. You're moving into the guest room tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight. You're meeting with Rebecca's office tomorrow to discuss settlement terms. And you're going to be very, very generous with those terms. Juniper, please. His hands were shaking now, actually trembling as he reached toward me. I pulled back. Don't touch me. Why are you doing this? His voice broke on the question like he was the victim in this situation. Why? I laughed, sharp and bitter. You built a second family using our children as alibis. You brought Mason and Emma to your secret playground dates, made them unwitting accomplices in your affair. You stole from our joint accounts for 7 years while I budgeted our household expenses and worried about retirement savings. I closed the laptop with a decisive snap. You lied every single day. Every morning when you kissed me goodbye. Every night when you came home. Every Saturday when you pretended those park trips were about quality time with the kids. I never meant to hurt you, he tried. You never meant to get caught, I corrected. There's a difference. I'm doing this because I'm good at my job, Arlo. And right now, my job is destroying you as efficiently and completely as possible. I stood up, gathering the laptop. The guest room is ready. I changed the sheets this morning. How thoughtful of me. Arlo sat there, broken and confused, still trying to process how quickly his life had unraveled. He thought he was so careful, so smart, keeping the two families separate, maintaining the lie with precision. He'd forgotten one critical detail. His wife was smarter. What I didn't tell him, what I was saving for the perfect moment, was the discovery I'd made that afternoon. The detail that transformed this from a divorce into something that could send him to prison. After leaving Rebecca's office, I'd kept digging into Vanessa's background, found records from the fertility clinic where I'd donated eggs 7 years ago. Back when Ivy was fighting cancer and medical bills were crushing us both, I'd donated anonymously to help pay for her treatment. The clinic had assured me my genetic material would go to families who desperately wanted children, that my identity would remain completely confidential. But there was Arlo's signature on authorization forms, forged consent documents with my name, payment records showing money changing hands with clinic staff who'd looked the other way. He hadn't just had a child with another woman. He'd used my genetic material without my knowledge or consent, stolen my eggs, used them to create Lily with Vanessa while I had no idea any of this was happening. Lily wasn't just Arlo's daughter. She was mine too. Biologically, genetically mine. My DNA. My child, raised by a stranger for 6 years while I remained completely oblivious. The medical fraud elevated this beyond divorce, beyond financial deception. This was reproductive coercion, identity theft, criminal charges that could send Arlo to federal prison. But I wasn't mentioning that yet. That card was still hidden. In crisis management, you never reveal your most devastating evidence until the moment of maximum impact. You build your case piece by piece, letting your opponent think they understand the full scope of their exposure. Then you hit them with the thing they never saw coming. I watched Arlo stumble toward the guest room, shoulders slumped, moving like a man who'd just realized his life was over. He thought he understood what was happening, thought this was about the affair, the financial fraud, the systematic lying. He had no idea I wasn't just taking him down. I was taking everything, including my daughter. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. I lay in our bed, the bed Arlo and I had shared for 10 years, staring at the ceiling while he tossed restlessly in the guest room down the hall. Every creak of the house felt amplified, every sound like accusation. Around 3 in the morning, I gave up pretending and went downstairs with my laptop, made coffee that I didn't drink, pulled up the fertility clinic records again, reading through them with the kind of obsessive focus that comes from knowing your entire reality has shifted. My eggs, my genetic material, taken without permission and used to create a child I'd never known existed. The violation was so profound I couldn't find adequate words for it. This wasn't just betrayal or infidelity. This was theft of something fundamental, of my biology, my future, my choices. By the time the sun rose Wednesday morning, I'd compiled everything into a new folder, documentation that would change this from a divorce case into something that could send Arlo to prison. I met Rebecca at her office at 9 o'clock, before her regular appointment started. She was already there, coffee in hand, looking like she'd slept as poorly as I had. I laid the fertility clinic records out on her conference table without preamble. Authorization forms with signatures that were supposed to be mine but weren't. Payment records showing cash transfers to clinic staff. Medical documentation proving Lily's genetic parentage. Half Arlo, half me. Rebecca picked up the first document, then the second, then the third. Her usual professional composure cracked completely. Her hands actually trembled as she read through the evidence of what Arlo had done. Juniper, this is. She set down her reading glasses, looking at me with something between awe and horror. I've been practicing family law for 28 years. I've seen terrible things, abuse, fraud, systematic cruelty, but I've never seen anything like this. She spread the documents across the table, studying each one with the focused intensity that made her legendary. This isn't just reproductive coercion. This is medical fraud, identity theft, forgery, potentially bribery of medical staff. The criminal exposure here is enormous. My voice came out steadier than I felt. 7 years ago, my sister Ivy was fighting cancer. Stage 3. The treatment was bankrupting both of us. I donated eggs to help cover her medical bills. The clinic told me it was completely anonymous, that my identity would be protected, that my genetic material would go to families who desperately wanted children. I pointed to the forged authorization forms. Arlo accessed my medical records, forged my consent, paid off clinic staff to look the other way. He stole my eggs and used them to create Lily with Vanessa while I had no idea any of this was happening. Rebecca was already making notes in her precise handwriting. We file emergency motions immediately. Biological parentage takes precedence over all other custody considerations. Lily is legally your daughter, regardless of who's been raising her. She looked up, meeting my eyes. Juniper, this changes everything. We're not just talking about divorce anymore. We're talking about criminal charges that could send Arlo to federal prison for years. Good, I said, and meant it. That afternoon, Rebecca brought in Patricia Newell, a forensic accountant who specialized in finding hidden assets in complex divorce cases. Patricia was in her 40s with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, the kind of woman who could look at a spreadsheet and see the lies hidden between numbers. She set up camp in Rebecca's conference room with our financial records spread across every available surface. Bank statements, tax returns, business documents, property records. 7 years of Arlo's carefully constructed financial deception laid bare under fluorescent office lighting. I sat there while Patricia worked, watching her highlight figures and make notes and cross-reference accounts with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. By late Thursday afternoon, she'd uncovered things even I hadn't known to look for. He's been siphoning money since before Lily was born, Patricia explained, turning her laptop screen so Rebecca and I could see the spreadsheets she'd created. Not just the $2,000 a month to Vanessa through the fake consulting company. That was actually the smallest part of it. She pointed to highlighted figures that made my stomach turn. He's been inflating business expenses, hiding income through shell corporations, creating phantom consulting fees that go to accounts he controls. Look here, this property development in Worcester? He inflated the costs by 30% and pocketed the difference. This Cambridge renovation? Same thing. How much? Rebecca asked, her voice sharp. Patricia pulled up another spreadsheet. Best estimate based on what I found so far? Close to $2 million over 7 years. Maybe more if I keep digging. $2 million. While I'd been clipping coupons and budgeting our household expenses and worrying about whether we could afford to refinish the hardwood floors, I felt sick. Actually nauseated. The scope of Arlo's deception was so staggering I couldn't fully process it. Rebecca and Patricia exchanged glances, the kind of look professionals share when they know something's about to get complicated. This level of fraud has federal implications, Rebecca said carefully. Tax evasion, wire fraud, potentially money laundering depending on how he moved the money. We'd need to report it to the authorities. The IRS, possibly the FBI. I thought about what that meant. Criminal investigations, federal charges, prison time measured in years, not months. Public scandal that would destroy everything Arlo had built. Then I thought about Lily, about Mason and Emma, about the life Arlo had systematically destroyed while pretending to be a devoted husband and father. Do whatever's necessary, I told them. I want everything documented. Every dollar he stole, every lie he told, every law he broke. All of it. Thursday afternoon my phone rang with an unknown number. I was sitting in my car outside the grocery store, staring at a shopping list I couldn't focus on when the call came through. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Juniper Hartley? A woman's voice, shaky and uncertain. This is Vanessa Moreau. Please don't hang up. I froze. Of all the people I'd expected to hear from, Vanessa was at the bottom of the list. The other woman, the mistress, the person who'd helped Arlo build his secret life. I'm listening, I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. There was a long pause. I heard her breathing, heard what sounded like traffic in the background. Then her voice cracked. I just received notice that you're filing custody motions for Lily. The paperwork says she's biologically yours. Juniper, I swear to God I didn't know. Arlo told me you'd agreed to everything. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles going white. Agreed to what exactly? He said you couldn't carry another pregnancy after Emma, that it had been too difficult, too risky, but you wanted him to have more children. He said it was all arranged, that you'd signed consent forms, that this was what you wanted. Vanessa's breathing was ragged now, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. He showed me documents with your signature, medical authorizations. I never thought to verify them. I just thought I was helping. I thought this was some kind of modern arrangement, that you were okay with it. God, I'm so stupid. He was crying now openly. I never meant to be part of hurting you. My anger wavered. I'd spent days imagining Vanessa as a villain, the knowing participant in Arlo's betrayal, the woman who'd deliberately broken up my marriage. But she sounded as devastated as I felt, as manipulated, as used. Did he tell you he was married? I asked. Yes. He was honest about that from the beginning, but he said you had an arrangement, that you were focused on your career, that you'd essentially agreed to this kind of situation because it worked for everyone. Vanessa's voice dropped. I was 30 years old and desperate for a family. I just ended a relationship that went nowhere. I wanted a child so badly, and here was this successful, charming man offering me exactly what I'd been dreaming about. I believed what I wanted to believe. We talked for over an hour. She told me everything, how they'd met at an open house for one of Arlo's development properties, how he'd pursued her with focused intensity, how he'd painted their relationship as something unconventional but consensual. A modern arrangement with his career-focused wife's blessing. He was so convincing, Vanessa said. He knew exactly what to say, how to make it all sound reasonable. Like we were pioneers in some new kind of family structure instead of what it really was. He showed you forged documents, I said, with my signature. The fertility clinic records prove it. He paid staff to look the other way to process the paperwork without proper authorization. You weren't helping, Vanessa. You were being used. We both were. Her sob echoed through the phone. What happens now? To Lily. I took a breath, thinking about the little girl with Mason's nose and my dimples. My biological daughter, raised by a stranger for 6 years while I remained completely oblivious. Now we make sure Lily's transition is as gentle as possible. She's 6 years old and none of this is her fault. She didn't ask for any of this. You want custody? Vanessa's voice was small. Full custody? She's my biological daughter, I said simply, but I don't want to traumatize her. We'll work something out. Therapy, gradual transition, whatever she needs. You've been her mother for 6 years. That matters. When we hung up, I sat in my car in the grocery store parking lot and cried. Really cried for the first time since this started. Not just for myself but for Vanessa, for Lily, for all of us caught in the web of lies Arlo had spun so carefully. Two women who should have been enemies, brought together by the systematic manipulation of a man who'd treated us both like pawns in his elaborate game. The grocery list sat forgotten on my passenger seat. I'd come here to buy milk and bread and the other mundane necessities of family life. Instead, I'd gained an unexpected ally in the strangest possible place, and somehow that felt like the first real step toward making any of this right. Friday morning, Rebecca filed the emergency motions. I wasn't there when she submitted the paperwork to the courthouse. She told me it was better if I stayed home, maintained normalcy for Mason and Emma, let the legal system do its work. But I felt it happen anyway. Felt the moment when our private disaster became official court business. When Arlo's carefully constructed lies became documented evidence in legal filings that would follow him forever. The courthouse moved faster than I'd expected. Rebecca called Friday afternoon, surprise evident in her voice even through her professional composure. We have a preliminary hearing Monday at 2 o'clock. Judge Margaret Thornton. She's excellent, no nonsense, seen everything, won't tolerate games. That fast. The medical fraud aspect moved it up the priority list. Reproductive coercion cases get immediate attention. Plus, honestly, my reputation helped. Judge Thornton and I have worked together for years. She knows I don't file emergency motions unless they're genuinely urgent. Monday afternoon arrived with the weight of inevitability. I dressed carefully. Conservative navy suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. I looked like what I was. A professional woman seeking justice, not revenge. Rebecca met me outside the courthouse, briefcase in hand, looking like she was about to wage war in the most civilized way possible. Arlo will be here with representation, she warned as we walked through security. He hired someone over the weekend, Daniel Morrison from a small firm in Cambridge. Good lawyer, but he's outmatched and he knows it. We entered the courtroom 15 minutes early. Arlo arrived 10 minutes later with a lawyer who couldn't have been more than 35, young, nervous, carrying a briefcase that looked brand new. Daniel Morrison introduced himself with a handshake that was slightly too firm, trying to project confidence he clearly didn't feel. Arlo wouldn't look at me. He sat at his table staring straight ahead, jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. Judge Margaret Thornton entered at exactly 2 o'clock. She was in her early 60s, gray hair cut short, sharp eyes that missed nothing. The bailiff called us to order and she settled into her chair with the air of someone who'd presided over thousands of cases and had no patience for nonsense. This is a preliminary hearing on emergency motions filed by petitioner Juniper Hartley regarding custody of the minor child Lily Moreau, Judge Thornton said, reviewing the documents in front of her. I've read the initial filings. They make serious allegations. She looked up directly at Arlo. Mr. Hartley, I'm going to ask you some direct questions. Answer yes or no. Your attorney can object if there's legal basis, but I want simple answers first. Understood. Yes, Your Honor, Arlo managed. Did you access your wife's genetic material from a fertility clinic without her knowledge or consent? Daniel Morrison started to stand, but Judge Thornton held up one hand. This is a yes or no question, counselor. Your client can answer it. Arlo's voice was barely audible. Yes, Your Honor, but I can explain. I'm not asking for explanations yet. Did you forge authorization documents bearing your wife's signature? Yes, but did you make payments to clinic staff to facilitate this unauthorized use of genetic material? Your Honor, if I could just. Judge Thornton's expression hardened. Mr. Hartley, I asked a yes or no question. Did you make payments to clinic staff? Yes. The word hung in the courtroom like an admission of guilt at a murder trial. Judge Thornton removed her reading glasses, studying Arlo with an expression that made even me uncomfortable, and I was on the right side of this. I've heard enough for today. Temporary custody of the minor child Lily Moreau is granted to Mrs. Hartley pending full evaluation and investigation. Mr. Hartley, you are prohibited from contact with the child until further notice. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks for a full hearing. She looked at Daniel Morrison. Counselor, I suggest you advise your client about the severity of his situation. This isn't just a custody dispute. These allegations have criminal implications. Arlo's face crumbled. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, but he shrugged it off, standing abruptly and walking out of the courtroom without looking back. Rebecca squeezed my hand under the table. That went better than expected. It felt hollow though. A victory, yes. Legal validation that I was Lily's biological mother, that Arlo had committed fraud. But Lily's entire world was about to be turned upside down, and no legal ruling could make that easier. The following week brought more hearings, more testimony, more painful revelations that kept getting documented in official court records. Vanessa appeared as a witness on Wednesday. She walked into the courtroom composed but clearly devastated, wearing a simple black dress, no jewelry except small earrings. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past 10 days. Rebecca questioned her first, establishing the timeline of her relationship with Arlo, the lies he'd told, the forged documents he'd shown her. Did Ms. Moreau know that Mrs. Hartley had not consented to the use of her genetic material? Rebecca asked. No, Vanessa said clearly, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. I was told Mrs. Hartley had signed off on everything. Arlo showed me authorization forms with her signature, medical releases, consent documents. I had no reason to doubt them. What did Mr. Hartley tell you about his marriage? That it was unconventional but consensual. That Juniper was focused on her career and had essentially agreed to this arrangement because it worked for everyone involved. Vanessa's voice cracked. He was very convincing. He made it sound like we were part of some modern family structure, pioneers in a new kind of relationship. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Daniel Morrison tried during cross-examination to paint Vanessa as a willing participant participant in an affair who'd known exactly what she was doing. But she didn't budge. "I thought I was a second partner in an open marriage," she said firmly. "When I discovered the truth, that Juniper had no knowledge of any of this, that I'd been raising her biological daughter under completely false pretenses, I was horrified." Morrison pressed harder. "But you continued the relationship with Mr. Hartley for 7 years." "Because I believed his lies for 7 years," Vanessa shot back. "The moment I learned the truth, I ended all contact with him. I've cooperated fully with Mrs. Hartley's attorney. I'm not fighting the custody transfer because Lily deserves to be with her biological mother." After her testimony, Vanessa approached me in the courthouse hallway while Rebecca was handling paperwork. We stood there awkwardly, two women connected by lies neither of us had known we were living. "I'm not going to fight the custody transfer," she said quietly. "Lily is your daughter. Biologically, legally, I had no right to raise her under false pretenses, no matter how much I love her." Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't bother wiping them away. "But please, can I still see her? Not as her mother, but something. She's the only family I have. I know I have no right to ask, but..." "Yes," I interrupted. "Of course you can see her. You've been her mother for 6 years, Vanessa. That matters. We'll work something out. Supervised visits, therapy sessions, whatever helps Lily adjust." She nodded, unable to speak, and walked away before she completely broke down. That night, I had the hardest conversation of my life. Mason, Emma, and I sat together on our living room couch while I tried to find words to explain that their Saturday park friend was actually their sister. "You know how we talked about Daddy's friend Lily from the park?" I started carefully. Mason nodded, reaching for the bowl of popcorn I'd made as a comfort prop. "The one who looks like me, right? Well, I need to tell you something important. Lily is your sister. Your real sister." Emma's eyes went wide. "Like a for-real sister? Not just a friend, for-real sister." Mason's forehead wrinkled in confusion. "But how? You weren't pregnant." I would have remembered. I took a breath, keeping it as simple and age-appropriate as possible. "Sometimes families are created in different ways. Lily was made using special cells from Daddy and me, but another woman carried her in her body and raised her. We didn't know about her until recently." "So she's our sister for real?" Emma asked again like she needed confirmation. "Yes, sweetheart, for real. She has the same mommy and daddy as you, even though she was raised by someone else." Mason processed this with 7-year-old logic. "Is she going to live with us?" "Yes. It's going to be a big change for everyone, especially Lily. She's going to need lots of patience and kindness while she adjusts to her new family." "Can she have the room next to mine?" Emma asked, already planning. "I can show her all my stuffed animals." That night, after the kids were asleep, I called my sister Ivy. Told her everything I'd been holding back for 2 weeks. The affair, the secret daughter, the medical fraud, the custody battle. "I need help, Ivy. I can't manage 3 kids in this legal battle alone." "I'll be there this weekend," she said immediately. No hesitation, no questions about how long or what it would cost her. "Pack a bag for a few months. You're not doing this alone." "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was trying to process." "Juniper, stop. You're allowed to fall apart. That's what I'm here for." Rebecca arranged the first official meeting for the following Tuesday at Dr. Sarah Kim's office, a child therapist who specialized in family transitions. Neutral territory for Lily to meet me as her biological mother. I was terrified. What do you say to a 6-year-old whose entire world is being rearranged? Lily arrived with Vanessa, clutching a stuffed rabbit that looked well-loved, one ear slightly frayed. She was beautiful, dark curls escaping from 2 braids, Mason's distinctive nose, my dimples showing when she smiled uncertainly. When she saw Mason and Emma in the waiting room, her face lit up. "Are we having a special playdate?" Vanessa had clearly prepared her carefully, framing this as something exciting rather than scary. Dr. Kim led us into her office, a warm space with toys and books and comfortable furniture designed to put children at ease. She guided the conversation with practiced gentleness. "Lily, do you remember meeting these people before?" Lily nodded, suddenly shy. "At the park. That's Mason and Emma." "That's right. And this is Juniper. She's Mason and Emma's mommy." "I know," Lily said, hugging her rabbit tighter. Dr. Kim smiled. "Lily, Juniper's your mommy too. You grew in a very special way, and now you have 2 families who love you very much." Lily looked confused but not upset. She studied me carefully, then looked at Vanessa for confirmation. "Can I still see you?" she asked Vanessa, her voice small. "Of course," I said quickly before Vanessa could answer. "Vanessa will always be part of your life. We're just making your family bigger, not replacing anyone." Lily considered this seriously, then turned back to Mason and Emma. "Can we play now?" And just like that, she was 6 years old again, focused on toys and games, accepting what adults told her with the resilience only children possess. I watched her play with my other children, my 3 children, and felt something shift inside me. This was my daughter, and somehow I was going to make this work. The transition period Dr. Kim had mapped out was supposed to be gradual. Weekly visits increasing to overnights, then weekends, then finally full custody. A careful, measured approach designed to minimize trauma for a 6-year-old whose world was being completely rearranged. But 3 weeks into the custody proceedings, everything accelerated. I was making lunch for the kids on a Thursday afternoon when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw an unmarked sedan parked at the curb and a woman in a dark pantsuit standing on my front steps. Detective Sarah Brennan from Boston PD's Fraud Division. She held up her badge when I opened the door. "Mrs. Hartley, I need to discuss some findings that emerged from your divorce case. May I come in?" We sat in my living room while Mason and Emma watched cartoons upstairs, oblivious to what was happening. Detective Brennan was in her mid-40s, no-nonsense demeanor, the kind of cop who'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by much. She spread documents across my coffee table with practiced efficiency. "Your forensic accountant's findings triggered a deeper investigation," she began. "What we've uncovered goes far beyond hiding assets in a divorce. Mrs. Hartley, your husband wasn't just stealing from you. He was systematically defrauding his business partners and clients." I stared at the documents. Bank records, construction contracts, development agreements. The fake Boston Consulting Group was just one shell company among dozens, Detective Brennan continued. He's been inflating project costs on development deals, skimming from construction budgets, creating phantom consulting fees that go straight to offshore accounts he controls. She pointed to highlighted figures that made my vision blur. "This Worcester property development, he told investors it cost $4 million. Actual costs were $2.8 million. He pocketed the difference. Same pattern across multiple projects over 7 years. How much total?" My voice sounded distant, disconnected. "Over $2 million in documented fraud. Probably more we haven't found yet." Detective Brennan met my eyes. "The district attorney's office is filing federal charges. Wire fraud, tax evasion, money laundering. This is serious, Mrs. Hartley." My stomach dropped. "How long? If he's convicted, 10 to 15 years, potentially. Depends on how many counts stick and whether he cooperates." She paused. "You should know. You'll likely be called to testify about the financial fraud, the hidden accounts, the systematic deception." I thought about Mason and Emma visiting their father in federal prison. Thought about Lily, who barely knew Arlo, growing up with a convicted criminal as her biological father. "Whatever's necessary," I said finally. "He made his choices." Detective Brennan nodded, collecting her documents. "The DA will be in touch. In the meantime, if Arlo contacts you directly, document everything. He's getting desperate." She was right about that. 2 days later, Arlo showed up at our house. I was getting Mason ready for soccer practice when I heard pounding on the front door, urgent and aggressive. "Juniper, open the door. I know you're in there." Mason's eyes went wide. "Is that Dad?" "Go upstairs with Emma," I said quietly. "Lock your bedroom door. Don't come out until I tell you." I called the police first, then went to the door. Didn't open it, just spoke through the wood. "Arlo, there's a restraining order. You're not supposed to be here. Please." His voice cracked. "Just listen to me. I can explain everything. The money, the accounts, all of it. If you just drop the charges." "Drop the charges?" I couldn't help the bitter laugh. "You stole from me for 7 years. You committed medical fraud. You've been defrauding your business partners. This isn't about me anymore, Arlo. This is federal. I'll lose everything. My business, my reputation." He was crying now, actual tears in his voice. "Think about the kids. Mason and Emma deserve to have their father. You should have thought about that before you built a second family and stole millions of dollars." The police arrived within minutes. 2 officers who looked unsurprised by the situation. Apparently domestic disputes were routine. They escorted Arlo away while he shouted promises and threats and desperate pleas that echoed down our quiet street. Mrs. Patterson from next door watched from her window. So did the Johnsons across the street. By tomorrow, everyone in the neighborhood would know. After that, Arlo tried calling. I blocked his number. He tried emailing. Desperate messages alternating between begging for forgiveness and threatening to fight for custody. His mother called, crying, pleading for me to consider the children. "He made a terrible mistake, Juniper, but he's still their father. Those children need him." "He's a criminal," I replied, voice cold. "And the children are better off without him. Don't call again." His business partners weren't as forgiving. Within a week, 3 separate lawsuits were filed. Civil cases seeking damages for the money Arlo had stolen from development projects. His commercial real estate firm collapsed spectacularly. Properties in development were seized. Investors demanded investigations. Everything Arlo had built over 15 years imploded. I watched it happen with grim satisfaction mixed with unexpected sadness. I'd loved this man once. Married him believing we'd build a life together. The fact that he'd destroyed it all through greed and systematic deception didn't erase those earlier years, even though they now felt like elaborate lies. Rebecca kept me updated on the legal proceedings. He's trying to negotiate a plea deal, wants to avoid trial. The prosecutors are considering it. He's offering full cooperation, testimony against business associates who might have been involved, forfeiture of all assets. Will they accept? Probably. Trials are expensive and time-consuming. If he gives them bigger fish and accepts responsibility, they'll reduce the sentence. Still looking at 5 to 8 years, but better than 15. Boston's elite circles are small and ruthless. Within days of the federal charges becoming public, I was fielding calls from former friends who suddenly wanted distance from the scandal. Coffee dates were mysteriously canceled. Dinner invitations stopped coming. At school pickup, other parents whispered and stared, pulling their children away like criminal behavior was contagious. Mason came home crying one afternoon, backpack dragging on the ground. Brandon's mom said our dad is a bad man. She said we can't have playdates anymore because you're probably bad too. I held him while he sobbed against my shoulder, fury burning in my chest at adults who punished children for their parents' crimes. But there were unexpected allies. Senator Patricia Walsh called personally, not through an assistant but from her own phone. Juniper, I know what you're going through. The press, the judgment, the way people suddenly decide you're contaminated. If you need anything, character references, legal connections, just someone to talk to, I'm here. 2 other longtime clients reached out with similar offers of support. People who remembered that I'd saved their careers, managed their impossible situations and never betrayed their trust. My sister Ivy became my anchor. She'd moved in the weekend after Lily's first visit, taking over the 3rd-floor guest suite and immediately making herself essential. She handled school pickups when I was in court, made dinner when I was too exhausted to function, sat with me late at night when the weight of everything threatened to crush me. You're doing the right thing, she reminded me constantly. Lily deserves to be with her biological family. Arlo deserves to face consequences for what he did. Lily moved in on a Saturday in late October. The leaves were turning brilliant colors, and there was a chill in the air that promised winter wasn't far off. Vanessa brought her mid-morning with a backpack full of clothes, the stuffed rabbit, and tears streaming down her face that she tried to hide. Dr. Kim was there to help with the transition, maintaining professional calm while 2 families restructured themselves around one little girl. Remember, we'll see each other every Tuesday and Thursday, Vanessa told Lily, kneeling down to her level. And you can call me anytime. Juniper has my number. Promise. Lily's voice was small, scared. Promise. The first week was brutal. Lily cried for Vanessa at bedtime. She wandered the house looking lost, unsure where she belonged in this new family. She asked constantly when she could go home, breaking my heart each time because she didn't understand this was home now. But Mason and Emma were extraordinary. They treated Lily like the sister she'd always been, pulling her into their games, defending her fiercely at school when other kids asked intrusive questions. She's our sister, Mason told a classmate who'd heard his parents gossiping. And if you're mean to her, you're mean to me. Slowly, day by day, Lily began to adjust. She started sleeping through the night, stopped asking when she could go home, began to laugh at Mason's jokes and play dress-up with Emma's elaborate collection of princess costumes. 2 weeks after she moved in, I found Lily sitting on Emma's bed while Emma carefully brushed her hair. You have the same curls as me, Emma said with 5-year-old pride. That's because we're sisters. Lily smiled, tentative but genuine. Real sisters. The realest, Emma confirmed with absolute certainty. Forever sisters. That night I was tucking Lily in when she said it for the first time. Mom, can I have water? Not Juniper. Not Mrs. Hartley. I brought her water with shaking hands, setting it on her nightstand beside the stuffed rabbit. Good night, Lily. Good night, Mom. It was a small moment, just one word, but it felt like everything shifting into place. Like maybe, despite all the pain and betrayal and systematic destruction of the life I'd thought I had, maybe we were actually going to be okay. The weeks after Lily called me Mom, for the first time blurred together in a strange mixture of legal proceedings and domestic routine. Court hearings punctuated by school pickups. Depositions sandwiched between homework help and bedtime stories. 2 lives running parallel. One focused on destroying what Arlo had built, the other on building what he'd nearly destroyed. 4 months after the initial custody hearing, Arlo accepted a plea deal. Rebecca called me on a Tuesday morning while I was packing lunches. He's taking it. 8 years federal custody, possibility of parole after 5. Full cooperation, testimony against his business partners, forfeiture of all assets. When's the sentencing? Friday at 2 o'clock. You don't have to be there if you don't want to. But I did want to be there. Needed to be there. Needed to see this chapter close officially. Friday afternoon, I sat in the federal courthouse with Rebecca beside me, watching Arlo stand before Judge Margaret Thornton. He'd lost weight. The suit he wore hung loose on his frame, making him look smaller somehow. Diminished. His hair had gone gray at the temples in just 4 months. His lawyer stood first, making a statement about remorse and acceptance of responsibility. About how Mr. Hartley understood the severity of his actions and was committed to making amends. Then Arlo spoke. His voice was quiet, barely carrying to where I sat. Your Honor, I destroyed my family through selfishness and greed. I violated my wife's trust and autonomy in the most fundamental way possible. I manipulated everyone around me, my wife, my business partners, Vanessa Moreau, to serve my own interests without regard for the harm I caused. He paused, swallowing hard. I take full responsibility for my actions. I accept the court's judgment and whatever consequences you deem appropriate. Judge Thornton's expression remained severe throughout. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of someone who'd presided over thousands of cases and had no patience left for this particular kind of deception. Mr. Hartley, you systematically defrauded your business partners and clients. You stole from your wife. Most egregiously, you accessed her genetic material without knowledge or consent, using medical fraud and bribery to create a child she knew nothing about. A violation so profound I struggle to find adequate words to describe it. She looked down at her notes, then back at Arlo. 8 years in federal custody followed by 5 years supervised release. Full restitution to all victims. And permanent forfeiture of parental rights to all 3 children, Mason, Emma, and Lily Hartley. Permanent forfeiture. The words echoed through the courtroom. Mason, Emma, and Lily would never have to face awkward custody visits or forced contact with a father who'd used them as props in his elaborate deception. No court-mandated relationships. No pretending. It was over. Arlo's shoulders slumped. 2 federal marshals approached to escort him out. As they led him past our row, he looked at me just once, briefly. I looked back without expression, without forgiveness or anger or anything at all. He'd made his choices. Now he'd live with the consequences. 2 weeks after the sentencing, Ivy asked me to sit down in our kitchen after the kids were asleep. She had that nervous energy people get when they're about to share news they're not sure how you'll receive. I need to tell you something, she started, wrapping her hands around a mug of tea she wasn't drinking. I've been seeing someone. It's still relatively new, but it's getting serious, and I wanted you to hear it from me first. I felt a smile forming. Ivy, that's wonderful. Why do you look like you're expecting me to be upset? Because, she took a breath. It's Detective Sarah Brennan. From your case. We met during one of the financial fraud interviews, started talking, and it just happened. I processed this. The detective who'd helped build the case against Arlo was dating my sister. The woman who'd uncovered the full scope of his fraud was now making my sister laugh over morning coffee. It should have felt strange, complicated, but somehow it didn't. Are you happy? I asked. Ivy's entire face transformed. The nervousness melted into something softer, more vulnerable. Really happy. June, she's brilliant and kind, and she understands what our family has been through without me having to explain everything. She just gets it. Then I'm happy for you. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. God knows we could both use some good news. Ivy's relationship with Sarah became another unexpected piece of our reconstructed life. Sarah was careful about boundaries. She never discussed Arlo's case or the ongoing investigation into his business partners, but her presence brought stability and quiet joy that had been missing for so long. The kids adored her, especially when she started teaching them basic self-defense moves in the backyard on weekends. Gentle techniques appropriate for children, framed as games but with real practical application. Everyone should know how to protect themselves, Sarah explained to me one Saturday while Mason practiced blocking moves and Emma giggled at getting to fight like her big brother. I watched them play, thinking about how families form in unexpected ways, how crisis and trauma sometimes bring people together who'd never have met otherwise. 6 months after Lily moved in, Vanessa and I met for coffee at a small cafe halfway between Cambridge and our neighborhood in the South End. It had become a monthly ritual, neutral ground where we could discuss Lily's adjustment, coordinate visit schedules, and slowly build something that resembled friendship from the ruins of Arlo's deception. She's thriving, I told Vanessa, pulling up photos on my phone. Her teacher says she's completely caught up academically, making friends, The therapy's really helping her process everything. Vanessa smiled, but sadness lingered in her eyes. Thank you for including me in her life. I know legally you don't have to. You raised her for 6 years, Vanessa. You loved her when I didn't even know she existed. That matters. That will always matter. And I meant it. Vanessa and I were both victims of Arlo's systematic manipulation. She deserved compassion, not punishment. We'd worked out an arrangement that Dr. Kim had helped facilitate. Vanessa saw Lily twice a month for supervised visits. She came to birthday parties and school events. It was unconventional, probably not what most family courts would recommend, but it worked. Lily called her Auntie Nessa. Now, I knew that probably hurt Vanessa more than she let on, this demotion from mother to aunt. But she never complained, never pushed for more than we'd agreed to. I'm seeing a therapist too, Vanessa mentioned, stirring sugar into her coffee, working through the guilt and the betrayal. It helps to talk to someone who understands how completely I was manipulated. I'm glad. You deserve support too. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching people come and go through the cafe. Young couples, families with children, professionals grabbing coffee between meetings. Normal life continuing around us. Have you thought about dating? Vanessa asked suddenly. Starting over? I laughed. 3 kids and a demanding career? Who has time? But truthfully, I had thought about it. Late at night when the house was quiet and I was alone with my thoughts. About what it might be like to trust someone again. To let someone in who hadn't been part of this disaster. Maybe someday, I admitted. Right now I'm just focused on making sure the kids are okay. Making sure Lily feels secure. Building something stable. Vanessa nodded. You're doing an amazing job, Juniper. Really. Lily talks about you constantly. About her sister and brother, about the house, about feeling like she belongs. Whatever you're doing, it's working. 1 year after Mason's innocent breakfast revelation, I stood in our brownstone living room watching my 3 children play together. The November light came through our bay windows at that particular autumn angle, golden and warm. Mason was teaching Lily the controls for his favorite video game, patiently explaining the strategy while she gripped the controller with intense concentration. Emma had constructed an elaborate scenario involving her entire collection of stuffed animals and a blanket fort that took up half the room. You have to be the dragon, Emma directed Mason. And Lily, you're the princess who fights the dragon. Can the princess win? Lily asked. Obviously, Emma said with 5-year-old certainty. She's the hero. In the kitchen, I could hear Ivy and Sarah making dinner together, their voices blending in easy conversation punctuated by laughter. The smell of roasted chicken and vegetables drifted through the house. This wasn't the family I'd imagined building when I married Arlo 10 years ago. Wasn't the picture-perfect life from our Christmas cards with coordinated outfits and forced smiles. But it was real, and it was ours, and it was more honest than anything Arlo and I had created together. My phone buzzed. A text from a potential new client. A tech CEO dealing with a harassment scandal that threatened to destroy his company. Work continued. Crisis management continued. Life continued. I'd learned something fundamental through all of this. Survival isn't about preventing disasters. It's about controlling the aftermath. About protecting what matters while cutting away what's toxic. Mason looked up from the video game and caught my eye. Mom, are you playing or just watching? I'm coming, I called back, setting down my phone and moving to join them in their blanket fort kingdom. Later that night, after the kids were asleep and Ivy and Sarah had retreated upstairs, I sat alone in the quiet living room. The house settled around me with familiar creaks and sounds. Outside, Boston continued its endless rhythm, cars passing, distant sirens, the city breathing. I let myself acknowledge the truth that Mason's breakfast question had revealed. My entire life had been built on systematic deception. But discovering that hadn't destroyed me. Instead, it had forced me to become someone stronger. Someone who didn't just manage other people's crises but could navigate her own with precision and purpose. Some women discover betrayal through lipstick on collars or suspicious texts. I discovered mine through a 7-year-old's innocent observation about his father's park friend. That observation led to uncovering medical fraud, systematic financial deception, and ultimately reclaiming a daughter stolen from my very DNA. Arlo was in federal prison facing years of consequences for his choices. Vanessa was rebuilding her life with my support, learning to forgive herself for being manipulated. And I was here in this brownstone with 3 children who shared my genetics, my home and my future. The truth that had kept me awake those first terrible nights, the scope of the deception, the stolen daughter, the fraud, had transformed into something else. Not revenge, though there had been satisfaction in watching Arlo's empire crumble. Not even justice, though the legal system had worked better than I'd expected. Reclamation, that was the word. I'd reclaimed my daughter, my autonomy, my future. I'd weaponized my professional skills to dismantle the lies and build something true in their place. I'm Juniper Hartley. I manage crises for Boston's most powerful people. But the most important crisis I ever managed was my own. And I didn't just survive it. I transformed it into the foundation for something better. The brownstone was quiet. The children were safe in their beds. Ivy and Sarah were building something genuine upstairs. And for the first time in a year I felt something close to peace. That, I thought, walking upstairs to my own bedroom was victory enough. If this story of uncovering the truth had you hooked from that breakfast table moment to the final courtroom victory, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Juniper confronted Arlo over that perfectly prepared salmon dinner, watching his whole world crumble with each word. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more gripping stories of justice and resilience like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.